Good morning, everybody. I'm a little bit late. I'm in my office. I decided to come to you from here this morning because I took a deposition yesterday of an expert on stress and stress management. And he had a lot of really interesting things to say, something that I hadn't talked about or never talked about. So the topic was really PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which can now be labeled in a lot of different things, but is something that I see quite a bit with my cases because if somebody's in a wreck, after the wreck, they a lot of times have symptoms consistent with some form of PTSD or one of the things that are close to that based upon the trauma of going through the wreck. The interesting thing that this guy said yesterday was, well, first of all, that therapists have gotten really, really good at dealing with PTSD because of wars, quite frankly. All of the people that have gone into wars, especially the last one in Afghanistan, where people had to go and come back and go and come back, that created its own unique form of post-traumatic stress disorder that was much more prevalent. So therapists have gotten a lot better at dealing with PTSD, but one of the things that he talked about is that there can be a group experience of PTSD, and that can happen simply from a large event that changes your life significantly that you didn't anticipate. So like he talked about the Great Depression and how after that, a lot of people that went through that ended up with a similar form of PTSD, which resulted in a similar consistent code of conduct that they created as a result of that experience. So like my grandfather was part of the World War II generation, so they went through the Great Depression as kids. So they had a series of beliefs that they held throughout their entire life from that experience that qualified as a PTSD kind of beliefs. They didn't trust banks, and there was a series of things that they believed in. What he was saying was that these significant life-changing events can cause trauma, which can cause PTSD, and that COVID is one of these events because this shutdown that occurred, which created, for a lot of people, significant financial stress. Didn't do that for everybody. For some people, it created financial windfall. I mean, if you work for a government agency and you kept getting your paycheck, suddenly you didn't have nearly the expenses that you had because you weren't going anywhere, you weren't doing anything, but you still got paid. So, for a lot of people, their balance sheets actually got better. They didn't get worse, but you couldn't do anything. And there was this massive isolation. And what he was talking about was that this huge change in our typical life day-to-day activities resulted in a traumatic event that has created a PTSD kind of response for people. And so there's a lot of people now that are expressing, whatever they label it, anxiety, depression, whatever it is, that they're really not sure why it happened. But now all of a sudden they're experiencing this, and he was saying the reason that it's happened is because of this COVID experience and this COVID shutdown. Never dawned on me. I never thought about that. So the other lawyer and I actually sat and asked him a lot of questions, just like, well, tell me more about this. So the point of that is if you're currently experiencing anxiety, depression, mood instability, whatever, and you're not sure why, it could be as a result of that experience, that threw you off enough in order to create this response. And he talked about that like anything can do this. The death of a parent, obviously the death of a spouse or a sibling, but simply like getting fired from your job or any type of significant life change that you didn't see coming. There are groups of people that just don't deal with that very well. And then there's groups of people that do deal with that very well, because he talked about there's groups of people that actually managed COVID spectacularly. And we'll talk tomorrow why those groups of people do that, by the way, what they do consistently in order to cause that type of a response. But for those who don't manage change well, I think the point is to understand that if you're suffering from symptoms right now and you're not sure why, it could well just be because of the COVID experience, that experience has caused you to, feel a traumatic event response, a PTSD type response to that situation. And so now you're exhibiting mood swings, depression, difficulty sleeping, whatever. And if you are experiencing those things, to please get help. There are really, really, really good therapists out there who know what they're doing in terms of helping manage that particular response and what you're dealing with. And obviously what people a lot of times do is they don't go get help and they turn to alcohol and they turn to drugs and they turn to, whatever, or they go to a primary care physician who means well, but a lot of times just goes to prescriptions, which what this guy said, he goes, the prescriptions, they can help for sure, but they mask the problems. They don't necessarily fix the problem. Whereas if you go to a therapist, you can fix the problem. I mean, PTSD is very treatable. It's a conditioned response. You remember Pavlov, where he would ring the bell and then feed his dogs, and so he got to where he could ring the bell and the dogs would salivate? Well, that's really PTSD. Traumatic response causes this, a traumatic event causes this quick response. Well, you can change your relationship to that event and you'll no longer have that response. So it's very treatable. So the point of this conversation is, never thought about that. I never thought of COVID as the shutdown as causing a PTSD response, but it makes complete sense that could easily happen. And if you're experiencing problems right now, number one, remember this: you are not broken. Nobody is broken. I hate it when I hear that. I hear that once in a while at Tony Robbins events. People say, I feel broken, and feel, and your feelings are legitimate and real, 100%. But you are not broken. Everybody has things that they have to deal with, and you can deal with those things. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're having difficulty sleeping, if you're feeling, any of these PTSD type symptoms and you can't figure out why, well, it could well just be because of the COVID shutdown. And whatever the reason is, go get help. Get help from a therapist who has experience in these issues and has the ability to go and deal with whatever your problem is and deal with it head on. Don't ignore it. Don't feel like you're broken. I shouldn't say that. You're entitled to your feelings, but you're not broken. And everybody that's got this can be dealt with and can be treated. And please go get the treatment. That makes a huge difference. We see this all the time in the Tony world, and we have our own way of dealing with it, the NLP way, the neuro-linguistic programming way, which I believe in and think is very effective. But there's 100 ways to deal with a PTSD type of response. Go get the help that works. Deal with people that have dealt with, especially people who've gone through military experiences, and get the help that will change your relationship to those events so that you're not masking the symptoms with alcohol or prescription drugs or whatever, but you actually change your relationship to that event so you're no longer feeling those types of responses. You're not broken. We're all in this together. Let's take care of each other. Thank you very much for watching. And tomorrow I'll talk about the people who go through those events kind of with flying colors, how they do that. What is it how do they look at the world in a little bit differently so that they come through those events in a different way? Thanks for watching. We're all in this together. Let's take care of each other. See you tomorrow.